Have you ever thought about something from your childhood that you thought was long gone, only to have it suddenly appear right in front of you? Imagine, for a second, stumbling across a piece of your past that you haven't thought about in years. Maybe it's an old toy, a photo, or even a keepsake. You glance at it, and the flood of memories comes rushing back. The joy, the laughter, the nostalgia. It's like the door to a time you thought was closed has been swung wide open again. But what if that door didn't lead to the past you remember? What if it led somewhere darker, somewhere you never expected? This is exactly what happened to a girl named Emma when she came across her childhood doll on eBay. The discovery should have been innocent, but what she found in the seller's description turned everything upside down. And now, I'm here to take you on a journey into the heart of a mystery, one that will leave you questioning the connection between memories, strangers, and the things we hold dear. Trust me, by the end of this video, you'll want to know what happens next. But before we dive in, I want you to do something for me. Imagine yourself in Emma's shoes. Picture it, you're scrolling through eBay, just casually browsing, when you come across an old item, something you remember from your childhood. It's an item you thought was long gone, something you lost when you were younger, something you'd give anything to hold again. It's your childhood doll, the one you carried everywhere, the one that was there for all your highs and lows. And there it is on the screen, for sale. Your first instinct might be disbelief. Could it really be mine? Could this be the same doll? The excitement builds, but there's a catch. Something isn't right. The seller's description doesn't just tell you about the doll. It tells you something that sends chills down your spine. The details in the description are too specific, too personal, and before you know it, you're questioning everything. Could this be a coincidence? Or is there something more behind this doll than you ever imagined? You see, the story of Emma and her childhood doll is one that's too strange to ignore, and it all starts with that one click. Emma, like many of us, had grown up with a deep connection to her doll. It was her constant companion, her best friend through the awkwardness of childhood and the confusion of adolescence. She carried it everywhere, at home, on family trips, and even to school on special days when she needed comfort. It was more than just a toy, it was a symbol of her security, her safety, and her innocence. But as life moved on, Emma grew older, and the doll, like so many things from childhood, was left behind in the attic of her memories. For years, she didn't give it a second thought, until that one day when she was casually scrolling online and her past came rushing back. The listing was simple at first glance. A vintage doll, in good condition, for a reasonable price. But as Emma clicked on the image to zoom in, something stopped her. The doll looked familiar, but not in the way she expected. She stared at the photo, her heart racing, her mind trying to piece together the puzzle. This couldn't be a coincidence. The doll had a unique feature, something that only she and her family would recognize. It was a tiny, hand-stitched mark on the back of the doll's neck, a detail she had always remembered from when she was a child. This mark was something no one else would have noticed, yet here it was, staring back at her from the screen. But as Emma read the seller's description, the unsettling details began to pile up. The seller didn't just know about the mark on the doll. They also knew about the exact location where the doll had been stored for years, in the attic of her family's old house. Emma hadn't told anyone about this, not even her closest friends. So how could a complete stranger possibly know? But wait, there was more. The seller mentioned something even more disturbing. I've had this doll in my possession for several years. It came from a family estate sale in a town not far from yours. The words "not far from yours" hit Emma like a brick. The seller was talking about her hometown, the same town where she grew up. The same town where she'd lost her childhood doll all those years ago. You might be wondering, how did the doll end up in the hands of a stranger? Could this be just a series of random events, or is there something much more sinister going on? Could the seller know more than they're letting on? And why would they even mention such specific details that no one could have possibly known? It felt like the universe was playing a cruel game with Emma, and now, she was forced to play along. But here's the twist that'll make you want to keep watching. As Emma dug deeper into the seller's profile, she discovered a piece of information that made her question everything she knew about her past, her family, and the truth behind the doll. The seller had listed other items from the same estate sale, items that seemed to have a strange connection to Emma's family history. A vintage photograph, a piece of jewelry that looked eerily familiar, and even a childhood book she remembered from when she was little, a book her grandmother had read to her before she passed away. How could all of this be connected? You're probably sitting there thinking, wait, what's the connection between the doll and these other items? How could this stranger know so much about Emma's past? Don't worry, I'll reveal all of that, but you need to stick with me for the entire journey. Trust me, the answers you're searching for are coming, but the truth is far more complicated and chilling than Emma, or any of us, could have ever imagined. So stay tuned. We're just getting started. If you want to uncover the mystery behind the doll, the seller, and the secrets of Emma's past, you won't want to miss what happens next. Keep watching, because in just a few moments, you'll find out how Emma uncovered the truth that will change everything. You'll never look at a childhood memory the same way again. Will Emma unravel the mystery before it's too late? Or will the secrets of her past remain locked away forever? You'll have to watch until the end to find out. Ready to dive deeper? Let's go. Emma had never been the type to dwell on the past. Sure, she loved to revisit old memories now and then, but life had a way of pulling her forward: new job, new relationships, new challenges. She had always prided herself on being practical, grounded. But everything changed the day she stumbled across the doll on eBay. It was the sort of thing that, at first glance, seemed like a harmless distraction. Just another nostalgic impulse. Yet, the more she stared at the screen, the more the world around her started to feel unnervingly out of place. At the time, Emma was in a transitional phase of her life. She had recently moved back to her hometown after a few years of living in the city. The fast-paced, noisy life she had gotten used to didn't feel right anymore. Something was pulling her back to the familiar streets, the quiet corners of the town where she had spent her childhood. Her decision to come back wasn't driven by any single reason, it was more of an underlying feeling, a need to reconnect with something real. Something stable. Her family was still there, though things had shifted. Her mother, who used to be the glue holding everything together, had become more distant over the years, her health slowly declining. Emma's father, on the other hand, had always been more of a quiet presence in her life. He worked from home, rarely ventured out, and preferred the company of old books and the comfort of routine. Emma loved her parents deeply, but it was clear to her that the dynamics had changed. The relationships that once felt so strong now seemed frayed and uncertain, like the edges of an old photograph. Since moving back, Emma spent most of her time working remotely and caring for her mom, who had recently been diagnosed with a condition that left her weaker than before. But as much as Emma tried to immerse herself in her responsibilities, something inside her began to stir. It wasn't just the odd sense of disconnection from the world she used to know. It was more than that. It was a feeling that something was off. Her memories of her childhood were becoming fragmented, like a jigsaw puzzle missing pieces. At night, she often found herself thinking about the doll, its smooth porcelain face, the soft fabric of its dress, the way it had always been there for her, comforting her through every storm. She wondered what had happened to it, why it had disappeared, and if it was still out there somewhere. Was it possible that it had been kept in storage, forgotten, just like the rest of her childhood possessions? Or had someone else taken it? It was this gnawing curiosity that led her to eBay that fateful afternoon. She didn't even know why she was looking for the doll. It was just one of those things. One minute, she was browsing for vintage items, and the next, she found herself typing in the search bar, "vintage childhood doll." She didn't expect much, just a glance at some old toys, maybe a couple of nostalgic items from the past. But what she found instead was something far beyond her expectations. The doll. The very one she had spent years trying to forget. The one she had lost when she was only 8. Now, you might be wondering how something as simple as a doll could stir up so many questions. But that's where the story takes a darker turn. When Emma clicked on the seller's profile and started reading the description, it didn't just stir up memories, it made her feel like she was on the edge of something she couldn't fully grasp. The seller's words were too personal, too specific. At first, she assumed it was some kind of coincidence. But then, as she read on, the details began to sink in. The mention of the estate sale. The reference to her hometown. The description of the doll's condition, which was eerily accurate. And the most unsettling of all, the vague but chilling remark about the doll's history that seemed to suggest more than just its past as a toy. Could the seller be some sort of collector? Someone who had scoured estate sales and auctions for forgotten treasures? That seemed plausible at first, but the more Emma thought about it, the more the whole situation felt off. It wasn't just the doll, there was something about the way the seller described it that made her uneasy. How could they know about the doll's mark? How could they know about the attic where it had been stored for years, tucked away with other family heirlooms? And why would they mention her hometown so specifically? What were they trying to tell her? Or worse, what were they hiding? As she dug deeper into the seller's other listings, Emma began to find more items connected to her family. A photo album from the early 90s. A locket that looked just like one her grandmother used to wear. A dusty, old book that she remembered reading with her mother when she was young. Each item seemed innocuous at first, but as she studied them, she began to realize they were more than just random finds. They were pieces of her own family's history, and they were being sold by a stranger who knew far too much about her past. Emma's mind raced. Could someone from her past be behind the seller's profile? Was there a connection she was missing? The thought sent a shiver down her spine. Her first instinct was to call her parents, but something held her back. They didn't have the answers, at least not ones that would make sense. Besides, her mother's memory had become increasingly unreliable, and her father wasn't the type to get involved in anything he deemed too complicated. Emma had learned to rely on herself, but now, in the face of this strange mystery, she wasn't sure who she could trust. She considered the possibility that this was all just a bizarre coincidence, a freak accident of timing and memory. But deep down, something told her this was more than just chance. There was something sinister in the air, something she couldn't explain but could feel creeping up behind her, like a shadow waiting to strike. And the more she looked into the seller's profile, the more it felt like the pieces of her life, her childhood, her family were slipping through her fingers, each new discovery leaving her more uncertain than the last. Her next move was crucial. She knew she couldn't just let it go. If the doll was real, if this seller was truly connected to her past, Emma needed answers. She had to know how the doll had ended up in their hands and why they were selling it. But what if the answers she found weren't the ones she wanted to hear? What if digging deeper into this mystery uncovered secrets that should have stayed buried? Stay with me, because as Emma moves closer to the truth, the questions only grow. And you won't believe where this journey leads next. Emma's obsession with the doll grew by the day, consuming her thoughts and overshadowing the simple routine of her life. She found herself scrolling through the seller's eBay profile late into the night, looking for new clues, hoping to make sense of the mystery that seemed to be pulling her in deeper. The more she dug, the more it became clear that something wasn't right. She had a sinking feeling that she was on the verge of uncovering something bigger than just an old toy. It was more than a simple lost childhood possession, it was tied to her family's history, to the house she grew up in, and possibly, to secrets her parents had never spoken about. But just as she felt she was starting to put the pieces together, something strange happened. One evening, after a particularly long day of searching, Emma logged onto eBay to check the seller's profile again, only to find that the listing for the doll was gone. Vanished. She refreshed the page, thinking it was a glitch, but no, there was nothing. No trace of the doll. The seller's account had been updated too, removing all previous items, including the other family heirlooms she'd spotted. It was as if the entire profile had been wiped clean, as if the doll and the strange connection to her family had never existed in the first place. Panic set in. Had she imagined it all? Could this be some elaborate hoax, a fake profile created just to toy with her? Or was someone actively covering their tracks? Emma sat frozen in front of her screen, her heart pounding. She scrolled through her browser history to see if there was any record of the listing she'd seen just hours before, but the page was gone. Every link that had led to it was dead. She felt a knot tighten in her stomach. What was going on? Was someone trying to shut her out, make her stop looking, or was she simply too deep into something she wasn't meant to understand? She was about to give up for the night, frustrated and confused, when she received a text message that made her blood run cold. It was from an unknown number, and it simply read, "Stop digging. You're going to regret it." No name. No explanation. Just a cold, ominous warning. Emma's hands shook as she stared at the screen, trying to make sense of it. Who would send such a message? Could it be the seller? Someone else connected to her past? And how did they know what she was looking for? The feeling of being watched, of being pursued by some unseen force, crept over her, and she realized she couldn't ignore the warning. Whoever sent it clearly knew she was on the right track. And yet, that only made her more determined to push forward. But as Emma's curiosity deepened, the obstacles kept piling up. The next day, while she was at her parents' house, she mentioned the doll to her father. She didn't tell him about the eBay listing, just casually brought up the subject, asking if he remembered anything about the doll. She was hoping for some insight, maybe a forgotten memory, some small piece of information that could guide her forward. But the moment she mentioned it, her father's face shifted. His usual calm demeanor faded into something unreadable, something tense. "Why are you asking about that?" he replied, his voice too guarded. Emma, taken aback by the abruptness of his reaction, tried to brush it off, but her father's eyes never left hers, his gaze sharp and knowing. "I just remembered it," Emma said, trying to sound casual. "I thought I'd see if you still had it in the attic or somewhere. It was always my favorite thing growing up." Her father's expression darkened, and he quickly stood up, as if he couldn't be in the same room with the subject any longer. "That doll, it's gone. It's not something we need to be talking about." The conversation shifted awkwardly after that, and Emma knew he was hiding something. The way he reacted was not normal, not the usual indifference her father showed toward things that no longer mattered. It was as if the doll itself had become a forbidden subject. She tried to press him further, but he quickly made an excuse to leave the room, leaving Emma with more questions than answers. The next day, something else strange happened. Emma went to visit her mother, who had been in and out of the hospital recently, and while she was there, she found an old box tucked away in the back of the closet. It was a small wooden box, the kind that looked like it had been forgotten for years. Inside, she found a collection of old photographs, many of which were from her childhood. There were pictures of her parents, of her playing in the yard, and one that particularly caught her eye, a picture of her holding the doll. But what struck Emma was the note attached to the photo. It was written in her mother's handwriting, but the words were oddly cryptic. "If you ever find it again, don't trust it." Emma's heart skipped a beat as she read the words. Why would her mother write such a thing? What was she warning her about? Was the doll just a toy, or was there something more to it that her mother had never told her? The feeling of unease only deepened. She had always known that her mother's memory wasn't what it used to be, but this felt different. It felt like there was something her parents were keeping from her, something they didn't want her to know. And now, the doll seemed to be at the center of it all. Determined to get answers, Emma decided to go to the town library, hoping to find something that might explain her parents' strange behavior. She scoured old records, looking for anything related to the family estate or the town's history, anything that could shed light on the mystery of the doll. But as she sifted through dusty newspapers and old books, one of the library assistants, someone she had known for years, pulled her aside. "I don't know what you're looking for, Emma, but you need to be careful. Some things are better left in the past. Trust me, there are people who won't want you digging around." The words were spoken softly, almost like a warning, but there was something in the assistant's eyes that told Emma there was more to this than just concern for her safety. The way the assistant had spoken, like they knew something she didn't, sent another shiver down her spine. Who could she trust? Emma stood in the library for a long moment, trying to process everything: the doll, the strange messages, her father's secretive behavior, her mother's cryptic note, and now the librarian's warning. It was becoming clear that there were layers to this mystery, layers that no one was willing to reveal. And as Emma's investigation continued, she began to realize that the answers she sought might not just change her understanding of her past, they might completely shatter everything she thought she knew about her family. But the biggest question remained: who was behind all of this, and why were they so desperate to keep the truth from coming to light? The closer Emma got, the more she felt like she was being pulled into a web of secrets, lies, and betrayals. And she couldn't help but wonder, if she kept pushing, would she uncover the truth, or would it destroy her in ways she couldn't even begin to imagine? The mystery was far from over, and every step forward only seemed to bring more uncertainty. Stay tuned. The truth is closer than Emma realizes, but so are the dangers that lurk in the shadows, ready to stop her from digging any deeper. As Emma's investigation continued, the unease she had felt for days turned into a gnawing, ever-present sense of dread. Every time she uncovered a new piece of the puzzle, it seemed to send her in a different direction, pulling her deeper into a labyrinth of questions that refused to be answered. But things took an even stranger turn when her best friend, Lily, became unknowingly dragged into the mystery. Lily had always been Emma's rock, someone she could confide in without fear of judgment, someone who had stood by her through thick and thin. When Emma had first stumbled upon the eBay listing, she had shared the discovery with Lily, hoping for some rational perspective. But Lily had dismissed it as just another odd coincidence. She'd even joked about Emma's growing obsession with the past, encouraging her to move on and focus on the present. However, after Emma showed her the cryptic note from her mother, the message from the unknown number, and the way her father had reacted to any mention of the doll, Lily started to see that there was more to Emma's concerns than she had initially realized. One afternoon, after Emma had spent hours researching and retracing her steps through the town's archives, she called Lily to catch up. As they spoke, Lily sounded unusually distracted, her voice tense and distant. Emma asked her what was wrong, but Lily brushed it off, saying she was just stressed from work. Emma, sensing that something was off, pressed her, but Lily quickly changed the subject, asking Emma if she had received any more mysterious messages. Before Emma could respond, Lily cut the conversation short, claiming she had to go. A few days later, Emma's phone buzzed with a notification from a group chat she had with Lily and a few other close friends from high school. There, in the chat, was an image. It was a screenshot of a text message, an eerie message, almost identical to the one Emma had received. The text read, "Stop digging. People are watching you. Don't make the same mistake." Emma's blood ran cold. The text had come from an unknown number, just like the one that had threatened her. But what was even more unsettling was the fact that Lily had received it too. Lily had never mentioned it to Emma, and the tone of the message was far more menacing than anything they'd dealt with before. Emma's heart raced as she quickly dialed Lily's number, her thoughts running wild with the possibilities. Lily picked up on the third ring, her voice shaky. "Emma, I didn't want to tell you about it. I didn't want to worry you. But when I saw the message, I realized it's connected to what you've been looking into. You have to stop." Emma's chest tightened. "Stop? Lily, what are you talking about? Why didn't you tell me earlier?" "I didn't want to get involved," Lily admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I'm scared, Emma. I've been getting strange things in the mail. Postcards with nothing on them but an address. Old, faded photographs of places I don't recognize. Someone knows what you're looking for. Someone knows everything." Emma felt the weight of those words hang in the air. The stakes were higher than she had realized. This wasn't just about a childhood doll or a strange listing on eBay anymore. Someone was watching them, someone who knew things about her and Lily that no one should have known. The danger wasn't just theoretical anymore, it was real, palpable, closing in on them both. But Lily wasn't the only one receiving unsettling messages. Emma had heard nothing from her parents for days, but on a whim, she decided to check her mother's old cell phone, which had been left behind when her mother's health had started to decline. She had never thought to check it before, assuming it was just full of old reminders and appointments. But when she powered it on, Emma found something that made her heart drop into her stomach. There, in the phone's messages, was a conversation between her mother and a contact Emma didn't recognize. The name, simply listed as unknown, stood out, and the messages were even more chilling. The first message was sent just a few days before her mother had passed away. It read, "You need to make sure she never finds out. It's too dangerous for her." The second message, sent just hours later, was more direct. "The doll is part of something much bigger. Don't let her look for it. If she does, we'll have no choice but to intervene." Emma froze, the phone slipping from her hands. She felt the room closing in on her, the air thick with the weight of these revelations. What was her mother hiding? Why had she been involved in this secretive exchange? Was her mother's illness somehow connected to this? And who was the person behind the unknown contact? Her mind was racing, and as she frantically tried to make sense of everything, Another unsettling thought struck her. She had seen a similar name, a contact labeled unknown, on her father's phone, weeks ago, when he had stepped out of the room during a family dinner. She had thought nothing of it at the time, assuming it was just some spam message, but now, in the context of everything that was happening, she realized it couldn't have been a coincidence. Her parents had both been keeping secrets. They had both been hiding something connected to the doll, and the mystery surrounding it wasn't just about lost childhood memories. It was about something much darker. In the days that followed, Emma received no more direct threats, but she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was still watching. Her every move, every phone call, every step she took felt like it was being monitored by someone who wanted her to stop, someone who had the power to make her life a nightmare. Desperate for answers, Emma decided to return to the library, hoping to find something she had missed before. But when she arrived, the librarian who had warned her earlier wasn't there. Instead, a new librarian, a man in his late 40s with a sharp, almost unnerving look in his eyes, greeted her. He seemed friendly enough at first, but as they spoke, Emma began to feel a strange tension between them. There was something off about his demeanor, something that made her wonder if he was somehow involved in the mystery she was trying to unravel. When she mentioned the doll and the messages she had received, the librarian's expression shifted. He gave a tight-lipped smile and nodded slowly, as if he already knew more than he was letting on. "Some things are better left untouched, miss," he said quietly, his voice carrying an unsettling finality. "The past, it has a way of coming back when you least expect it." Emma's pulse quickened. Had he known her parents? Was he connected to the mysterious messages? Was he part of the network of people who were trying to shut her down? With the librarian's warning hanging over her like a dark cloud, Emma left the library, the weight of her decision to keep digging growing heavier with every step. But as she stepped outside, a sudden chill ran down her spine. Across the street, standing in the shadows, was a figure watching her. She couldn't make out the person's face, but she knew, deep in her gut, that this wasn't just someone passing by. Whoever it was, they had been following her. And just like the librarian, they seemed to know far too much about the investigation she had started. The puzzle was only getting more complicated, and Emma was beginning to realize that every person she thought she could trust, her parents, Lily, even the librarian, might be hiding their own secrets. The stakes were rising, and Emma had no idea just how deep this rabbit hole went. Stay tuned, because what happens next will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew. The truth is out there, but it's more dangerous than Emma ever imagined. Emma's world was beginning to feel like it was unraveling, the threads of her life pulling apart in ways she couldn't begin to understand. Every new piece of the puzzle only seemed to lead to more confusion, more questions that piled on top of each other without answers. But nothing could have prepared her for what happened one cold, quiet evening when the sense of danger she had been feeling for weeks suddenly became undeniable. It all started with a phone call. It was late, way past midnight, and Emma was sitting in her dimly lit apartment, scrolling through her phone, as she had done so many nights before. She was exhausted, both mentally and physically, but something deep inside her kept pushing her to search, to dig, to uncover whatever secret her parents, the town, and even the people she trusted seemed intent on hiding. She had just been reviewing the strange messages from the mysterious contact when her phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but a shiver ran down her spine. Something about it felt off. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up, and without thinking, she answered. "Hello," she said, trying to keep her voice steady, though her heart was pounding in her chest. There was a long pause on the other end, the silence stretching out unnervingly. Then, a low, gravelly voice came through the phone. "You should have listened to the warnings, Emma," the voice rasped, sending a cold chill through her entire body. "Now, you've gone too far. You've seen too much. You're not going to get out of this." Her blood ran cold. The voice was distorted, as if the person on the other end was trying to disguise themselves, but it was unmistakable. This wasn't a prank or a wrong number. Whoever this was knew her name. They knew exactly what she had been doing, what she had been searching for. And they were threatening her. "Who is this?" she demanded, her voice shaky but resolute. There was a brief laugh, hollow and mocking. Then, in a chilling tone, the voice whispered, "You'll find out soon enough." Before Emma could respond, the call ended abruptly. She stared at her phone for a long time, trying to process what had just happened. Her breath was shallow, her hands shaking. It was the same feeling she had when she had first received that anonymous message, the one telling her to stop digging. But this was different. This wasn't just a warning, it was a promise of something terrible. But even as the fear and paranoia began to close in around her, Emma refused to back down. She couldn't. She had come too far, and the truth, whatever it was just out of reach. Yet the terror was growing, its grip tightening with every new discovery. And that was when everything took a turn she hadn't expected. The next day, Lily disappeared. Emma hadn't heard from her since their conversation the night before. At first, she thought it was nothing more than a coincidence, maybe a sign that Lily was just too scared, too rattled by the warnings to keep talking. But by noon, after several attempts to reach her, Emma knew something was wrong. Her texts went unanswered, and her phone rang straight to voicemail. Emma's heart raced as she dialed again and again, her stomach twisting with every unanswered ring. By the time she showed up at Lily's apartment, the door was locked, the lights inside were off, and no one answered when she knocked. It wasn't like Lily to just vanish. Emma felt the panic creeping up her spine, but she tried to stay calm. She told herself it was nothing. Maybe Lily was just hiding out, trying to process everything. But when she peered through the window and saw nothing but darkness, when she noticed that Lily's car was gone, she couldn't shake the feeling that something far worse was at play. She called the police, but even then, she felt the nagging sense that they wouldn't take her seriously. They would tell her it was just a case of a friend needing space, but deep down, Emma knew better. She could feel it in her gut. Lily was in trouble. By the time Emma left the building and stood outside in the cold, her phone buzzed again, the same unknown number flashing on the screen. Her breath hitched as she answered without hesitation. "Where's Lily?" she demanded, her voice trembling. The same distorted voice that had spoken to her the night before answered. "You should have stopped, Emma. You've made it worse. You've pushed too far. Where is she?" Emma repeated, her voice rising with desperation. "What have you done to her?" The voice was cold, almost pitying. "She's fine, for now. But you, Emma, you don't have much time. Not much time at all." Before Emma could speak again, the line went dead. Her legs felt weak as she sank to the ground, the weight of the situation crashing over her. The doll, the mysterious messages, the strange figures watching her, the warning from the librarian, everything was coming together, and the only thing Emma could see was the dark, swirling void of uncertainty. Was this about the doll? Was someone so desperate to keep her from the truth that they would go to such extreme lengths to silence her? Was this all a game to them, a twisted game of cat and mouse? Or was it something even darker, something that went beyond her understanding? The fear was overwhelming, suffocating her in a way she couldn't explain. But deeper than the fear was the gnawing, relentless urge to keep going, to keep searching. Because no matter what was happening, no matter how far she had fallen into this nightmare, Emma couldn't stop. The mystery was too big, the truth too important. She had to find Lily. She had to know what was happening. And she had to uncover the truth about the doll. As the hours passed, Emma's paranoia grew. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was being followed. She couldn't help but turn around every time she heard footsteps behind her, couldn't stop glancing over her shoulder, half expecting to see someone lurking in the shadows. The messages had started as vague threats, but now, they were becoming personal. They weren't just warnings anymore, they were promises. Someone wanted her to stop. Someone wanted her to be scared. And whoever that was, they were willing to do whatever it took to keep her from the truth. But Emma couldn't stop. She wouldn't. Every instinct in her told her that the danger was closing in, that her every move was being watched, that the walls were closing in around her. She had crossed a line, and there was no turning back now. And as she stood there, the weight of the mystery pressing down on her, she realized something that terrified her even more than the threats, the danger, the fear. Lily's disappearance was no accident. It was a warning. And it meant that whatever was happening, whatever was connected to the doll, to her family, to the secrets buried in the past, was far more dangerous than Emma had ever imagined. She was in too deep, and now, it was too late to turn back. Just as Emma thought she was closing in on the truth, the world around her began to crack open in ways she hadn't anticipated. Every piece of the puzzle, every lead she'd followed, every threat that had been made, suddenly seemed irrelevant in light of what happened next. It wasn't until the moment she least expected that the shocking truth was laid bare, and it shattered everything she thought she knew about the mystery. It started innocently enough. After a restless night spent staring at the phone, hoping for a new clue or some kind of breakthrough, Emma received a call from an unknown number once again. But this time, it wasn't the same cold, threatening voice she had heard before. This voice was familiar. It was warm, comforting, almost apologetic. It was her father's voice. "Emma, honey, I need to tell you something. You're not going to believe this, but you have to listen. I never wanted to burden you with the truth. I should have told you sooner, but I didn't know how," he said, his voice quivering, barely above a whisper. "I know you've been looking into things, trying to find answers, but you need to stop. It's not what you think. The doll, the messages, everything, it's all part of something bigger. Something that's been hidden from you for your entire life." For a moment, Emma couldn't breathe. Her father, the man who had always seemed like a pillar of stability in her life, was telling her things she couldn't comprehend. The shock and confusion were so overwhelming that it took her several seconds before she could manage to speak. "What do you mean? What are you talking about?" He hesitated, the words seemingly stuck in his throat. "It's too dangerous. I can't explain it all now, but just trust me when I say that everything you're digging into, it's not just some childhood memory or a forgotten trinket. It's a part of something darker, something that neither of us can control. We should have destroyed the doll when we had the chance." A chill ran through Emma's veins. Destroyed the doll? Her mind raced, trying to connect the dots. What could possibly be so dangerous about a childhood doll? What had her parents been hiding from her all these years? "You have to leave this alone," her father continued, his voice urgent now. "Please, just trust me. Whatever it is, whatever you've uncovered, it's best left buried." But before she could ask more questions, the call abruptly ended, leaving her frozen in disbelief. Her mind was a whirlwind of confusion, but one thing was clear: her father knew more than he had ever let on. And whatever he had just alluded to was something so sinister that it made everything she had uncovered so far seem insignificant. The doll was just the surface of something much deeper and much more dangerous. And then, it hit her, the most unsettling, terrifying thought. What if her father was involved in the very thing she had been trying to expose? What if he wasn't the innocent bystander, the well-meaning protector he had always seemed? What if he was hiding something even darker than she could imagine? That afternoon, as Emma sat reeling from the call, she decided to take matters into her own hands. She couldn't wait for more pieces to fall into place. The truth was within her reach, and if her father wasn't going to help her uncover it, then she would have to do it herself. She grabbed the old phone she'd found, the one that had once belonged to her mother, and began scrolling through the messages again. The ones from the mysterious unknown contact. There, buried in the conversation, was something she had overlooked before. It was a strange series of words, a cryptic phrase that made little sense at first glance. It read, "The key is in the name. Always go back to the name." At the time, she had thought it was just more of the same cryptic nonsense, another meaningless message meant to confuse her. But now, looking at it again with fresh eyes, it seemed to be something more. "The key is in the name. What name?" Her heart skipped a beat as she remembered something her father had said during one of their earlier conversations. It was a throwaway comment, something he had mentioned in passing years ago that Emma hadn't thought twice about at the time. "Your mother named you after someone special." At the time, she had thought it was just a sentimental remark, but now, with everything she had learned, she wondered, who was this person? And why had her mother named her after them? It was a long shot, but Emma decided to dig deeper into her mother's history. She combed through old family albums, rifling through the pages of forgotten letters and documents that had been tucked away in boxes in her parents' attic. And that's when she found it, a single, yellowed envelope marked with her mother's handwriting, addressed to someone simply listed as Aunt Rebecca. Aunt Rebecca. Emma had never heard her mother mention anyone by that name. She didn't have an aunt named Rebecca, at least, not one she had ever known of. With trembling hands, Emma opened the letter and read the contents inside. Her mother's words were clear, but the weight of them hit Emma like a ton of bricks. I'm sorry for keeping this from you for so long, but the time is coming when you'll need to know the truth. I never wanted you to be caught in the crossfire. I never wanted you to become part of the family's legacy. But you're stronger than I am. You always have been. Please don't blame me when you find out what this means. I hope you'll understand why I had to keep you safe from this dark history. The name must remain hidden. The letter ended abruptly, but Emma's mind was spinning. Who was Aunt Rebecca? Why had her mother mentioned a family legacy? And what was this dark history she had been kept safe from? Was this all connected to the doll? Was this legacy something more than just an old family secret? It all felt like a trap, a web of lies and secrets spun tight around her, tightening with every new revelation. And then, in the midst of her shock, Emma heard a noise. Faint scraping sound from the hallway outside her apartment door. She froze, her breath catching in her throat. She wasn't alone. Someone was in the building, and she had no idea who it was or why they were here. It was then that she realized the most terrifying truth of all. Someone had been manipulating her from the start. The threats, the warnings, the disappearance of Lily, all of it had been designed to push her toward one inevitable conclusion. She had been a pawn in a much larger game, and the players were far more dangerous than she could have ever imagined. Emma wasn't just chasing a childhood memory or a misplaced doll. She was chasing something far more sinister, something that had been hidden from her for years, and now, the people who had kept it hidden were closing in. And as she turned toward the door, ready to face whatever was waiting for her on the other side, she realized that the truth she sought was no longer something she could control. The darkness had found her, and there was no going back. Emma's mind was spinning, each thought more jumbled and terrifying than the last. The walls of her apartment seemed to be closing in, and for the first time since all this madness began, she felt like she was truly trapped. The letter, the doll, her father's cryptic warnings, Lily's disappearance, it was all spiraling out of control. The mystery was no longer just a puzzle to solve, it was a dark, living thing, threatening to consume her if she wasn't careful. She couldn't go back. She couldn't undo the steps she'd taken, and she couldn't stop now, even if every fiber of her being screamed for her to run away, to protect herself from the growing storm. But it was too late for that. The game had changed, and the stakes were higher than ever before. The scraping sound in the hallway outside her apartment was still ringing in her ears as she stood frozen in place, her heart pounding in her chest. She thought about her options, but every one of them seemed impossible. Her eyes darted to the window, no escape there. The phone in her hand felt heavier than ever, the weight of the decisions ahead pressing down on her like an anchor pulling her toward the depths. She needed to make a choice, but how could she, when every choice seemed to bring her closer to something she couldn't escape? And then, just as the sound of footsteps outside the door seemed to grow louder, her phone buzzed again. Emma's pulse quickened as she glanced at the screen. It was an unfamiliar number, but she recognized the area code. It was from her hometown, from the very place she thought she had left behind when she moved to the city. The place where her childhood had begun, where the doll had been buried in the past, and where everything that had happened now seemed so intricately tied together. She answered the call, but before she could say anything, the voice on the other end cut her off. You need to come home, Emma. You need to make a choice. Now. It was her father's voice again, but it wasn't the same. There was a sense of urgency, of fear, that made Emma's stomach twist. What do you mean? What's going on? Where's Lily? She almost couldn't get the words out, the weight of everything she'd uncovered so far choking her. She needed answers, but her father's response only made her more confused. It's not safe. Everything you've learned, everything you've uncovered, it's part of something bigger, something older than you can understand. If you don't come back now, if you don't leave this all behind, it's going to destroy you. You have to trust me, Emma. You need to stop. Her chest tightened. This wasn't just a warning anymore. This wasn't just her father asking her to stop her search. This was an order, and his voice held a kind of desperation that made her wonder if he was begging her to do something he couldn't say out loud. It felt wrong, but Emma was tired of running from the truth. She had already come too far, and no matter what her father said, she couldn't just walk away. But then, The next words he spoke hit her like a slap. "If you keep digging, Emma, you'll lose everything. You'll lose me. You'll lose yourself. I'm giving you a choice. Come back to me, leave this all behind, and I'll help you. But if you don't, if you keep going, the consequences will be irreversible." A choice. The weight of it was almost suffocating. Her father was giving her an ultimatum, one that wasn't just about the doll, or Lily, or the twisted mystery she had uncovered. This was about her life. It was about everything she thought she knew. And now, Emma had to decide. Was she willing to risk everything, to confront the terrifying truth and face whatever consequences lay ahead? Or was it worth sacrificing the truth, her own sanity, in exchange for her safety, for the life she had once known? Her thoughts raced. She thought of Lily, of how her friend had been pulled into this nightmare. She thought of the letters, the cryptic warnings, and the voice on the phone. Could she really trust her father? Had he been involved in all of this from the beginning? Or was he trying to protect her from something far worse than she could imagine? She had trusted him her entire life, but was that trust enough to ignore the feeling that he had been keeping secrets from her all along? The very secrets that might be connected to the mysterious doll, to the people she was being warned to stay away from? The fear crept up again. Was this a trap? A carefully orchestrated scheme to keep her quiet, to keep her from learning something that could destroy everything? The silence in her apartment grew heavier as Emma stood there, torn between the desperate desire for answers and the crippling fear of what those answers might cost. But just as she was about to make up her mind, the door to her apartment creaked open. It was the softest of sounds, but to Emma, it was deafening. She spun around, her breath catching in her throat, and there, standing in the doorway, was someone she never expected to see, her mother. But this wasn't the mother Emma remembered. This woman's eyes were wide with something unreadable, a mixture of fear and regret, and she was holding something in her hands, something that Emma instantly recognized. It was the doll. The very same one that had started all of this. The one her mother had locked away, the one Emma had thought was lost forever. "I didn't want you to know," her mother said softly, her voice shaking as she stepped into the room, clutching the doll tightly to her chest. "I didn't want you to get involved, but you had to know. You deserve to know the truth, Emma. And it's not what you think. None of this is." Emma's mind reeled. What did that mean? What was her mother saying? Why was she here? Why was she holding the doll, and what did it all mean? She could feel the tension in the room thickening as her mind screamed for answers, but all she could do was stand there, frozen. Her mother looked at her with a mixture of sorrow and resignation, as if she were offering Emma a choice, only this time, the choice was even darker. "You need to decide," her mother whispered. "You've already made the first step. You've uncovered the truth, but you're not prepared for what comes next. If you go down this path, you can't go back. You can never go back." Emma's hands trembled as she reached for the doll, her fingers brushing against the worn fabric. She could feel the weight of it, the heavy history behind it, the unknowns that still lingered. But just as her fingers brushed the edges, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from Lily. The message was short, cryptic, and chilling. "They're coming for you, Emma. You were right all along. The truth is darker than you think. Don't trust anyone. Not even your mother." The world seemed to tilt beneath her feet. In an instant, everything she thought she understood was thrown into chaos. Now, she had no choice but to confront her own past, the twisted secrets that her family had tried to bury, and the terrifying reality that the people she had trusted her entire life might be the very ones pulling the strings behind it all. And in the end, Emma realized something that shook her to her core. The truth wasn't just elusive, it was dangerous. And now, she had to decide if she was willing to pay the price for it. Emma's world was collapsing. Every step she took, every answer she uncovered, only seemed to bring her deeper into a dark web of secrets, lies, and treachery. The message from Lily echoed in her mind, twisting every thought, every suspicion into a fever pitch of paranoia. Don't trust anyone. Could it be true? Was her mother lying? Was her father part of this twisted conspiracy? Could the people closest to her be involved in something that threatened not just her, but her entire world? It wasn't just the doll anymore. It wasn't just her father's cryptic warnings or her mother's strange behavior, it was something bigger, something more insidious than Emma had ever imagined. She felt it in her bones, the weight of the conspiracy pressing down on her chest like a vice. And yet, she couldn't turn away. No matter how dangerous it got, she couldn't stop now. The pieces were falling into place, each one revealing a more terrifying truth than the last. With trembling hands, she pulled the doll closer to her chest, feeling its hollow eyes stare back at her as if mocking her every decision. The same doll she had cherished as a child, the one that had been buried in a corner of her memory, was now the key to a puzzle she wasn't sure she could solve without losing everything. The phone buzzed again, but this time, it wasn't a message from Lily. It wasn't a warning or a call for help. It was something worse. Her father's number. Emma's heart raced as she answered, her voice trembling despite her best effort to sound calm. "Dad." There was a pause on the other end, a long silence before he spoke, and when he did, his voice was strained, low, almost desperate. "Emma, listen to me. It's too late. They're coming for you." Her stomach dropped. The words hit her like a punch. "They're coming for you." "Who's coming? What the hell is going on?" she demanded, her voice rising in panic. She could hear the sound of movement on the other end, like someone was in a hurry, like they were trying to get away from something or someone. "It's bigger than just us, Emma," he said, his voice shaking now, his words falling over themselves. "They've been watching you. Watching everything you do. I didn't think they would find out about you this soon, but they've been waiting for you to uncover the truth. And now that you have," his voice cracked, and she could hear the sound of a door slamming in the background. "They know you're close. They know you've found the doll. And that's what they want. It's too late to protect you now. You have to run. Don't trust anyone. Not even." The call cut off abruptly. The line went dead, and Emma was left holding the phone, staring at the screen, her heart racing in her chest. She couldn't breathe. What was happening? Who was after her? And what had her father meant by "it's too late to protect you"? Was this all connected to the doll, to the family legacy, to whatever dark truth her mother had tried so hard to keep hidden from her? She could feel the walls closing in, could feel the pressure mounting with every passing second. Every clue, every lead, had just raised more questions, more mysteries, but she was running out of time to get answers. And then it happened, an explosion of noise, the sound of shuffling feet, and the sharp crack of glass shattering from the hallway outside her apartment door. Her heart stopped. Someone was here. Emma's mind raced. She bolted for the window, throwing it open and glancing down at the street below, but the sheer drop made it impossible to escape that way. Her pulse thundered in her ears as she spun around, frantically searching for any other means of escape. That's when she saw the shadow moving in the doorway. It was a figure she hadn't seen in days, someone she thought she could trust, her best friend, Lily. But something was off. Her eyes were wide, frantic, and her lips were trembling as she stepped into the apartment, her hands shaking. "Lily, what the hell are you doing here?" Emma asked, her voice tight, filled with a mix of confusion and fear. Lily's face was pale, and her breathing was shallow, but she didn't respond right away. Instead, she grabbed Emma's shoulders, her grip almost painful, and said the words that would change everything. "Emma, you need to come with me. Now. I know who's behind this. And it's not who you think." The room seemed to close in around her. She could feel the weight of Lily's hands on her shoulders, but it wasn't comfort, it felt like a warning. The urgency in her friend's eyes was unmistakable. But what was happening? Who had sent Lily here? Who? Emma asked, her voice cracking, the fear tightening in her chest. "Who's behind this, Lily? What do you know?" Lily hesitated, then let out a shaky breath, as if the words were too much to bear. "Your father. He's not just trying to protect you, Emma. He's part of it. He's been part of it all along. They've been using him, using your family. The doll, it's not just a childhood toy. It's a key. It unlocks something far more dangerous than either of us can imagine. And your dad, he's been feeding them information all these years. You were never meant to find out." Emma felt the ground slip out from under her. She wanted to scream, to push Lily away, to deny what she was hearing, but she couldn't. The words rang in her ears, each one more devastating than the last. Her father, the man who had always been her protector, was part of this. He had been working against her the entire time? No, no, this can't be true, Emma whispered, her voice trembling as the reality of the situation hit her. He's my father. He would never. Your father is trying to protect you. Yes, Lily interrupted, her voice filled with regret. But he's also trapped. He's not the one pulling the strings. There's someone else, someone much worse. And now they're coming for you, for both of us. We don't have time to explain everything. You need to come with me now, before it's too late. Before Emma could respond, a loud bang echoed through the apartment. The door flew open, and two men stepped in, their faces masked, their movements quick and efficient. The last thing Emma saw before everything went black was Lily's wide eyes, her hand reaching out to her, a desperate, pleading expression on her face. And then, nothing. The mystery that had begun with a childhood doll had spiraled into a deadly game, one that Emma was no longer sure she could survive. The conspiracy was bigger than she ever could have imagined, and now, trapped in the darkness, she realized that no one was safe. The truth was out there, but it was a truth that might cost her everything she had left. Emma's heart was racing, and the air around her felt thick with tension. Her head ached from the explosion of pain that came with every breath, but there was no time to focus on it. The world around her was spinning, a chaotic blur of sounds and images that made it nearly impossible to focus. She could hear the muffled sounds of men's voices in the background, and her body screamed for her to run, to escape. But there was nowhere to go. She had no more allies, no more answers. The truth was within her reach, but it felt like the universe itself was conspiring against her to keep her from it. When she opened her eyes, everything was dark. Her body was stiff, her arms tied behind her back. For a moment, she wondered if she was dreaming. Maybe this was some twisted nightmare that she'd wake up from any second. But no, the reality of the situation was too sharp, too real. The faint light filtering through the cracks of the room around her told her everything she needed to know. She was in a basement, cold stone walls pressing in on all sides. The faint scent of dust and mildew hung in the air, and the hum of an old light bulb above her added to the eerie atmosphere. She couldn't remember how she'd gotten here, only that everything had spiraled out of control so quickly that she didn't know who she could trust anymore. The door creaked open, and she tensed, every muscle in her body screaming in anticipation. Her eyes went immediately to the silhouette standing in the doorway, Lily. But it wasn't the same Lily she remembered. The urgency was gone, replaced by something colder, more calculating. The way she looked at Emma now, it was as if she were no longer her friend. No, this was a stranger standing before her. You, Emma whispered, barely able to get the word out through the tightness in her throat. She wasn't sure if it was disbelief or anger that made her voice shake, but she knew one thing for certain: this was the moment everything changed. The truth was finally within her grasp, but it was wrapped in the kind of betrayal that could shatter everything. Lily didn't respond immediately. She stepped closer, and Emma noticed the glint of something in her hand, a file, a thick stack of papers that looked as if they were covered in years of dust. Lily's face was unreadable, but Emma could see the tremor in her fingers as she flipped open the file, revealing documents she didn't understand but could already sense were linked to the twisted story she had been unraveling. You have to understand, Emma, Lily said softly, her voice low, almost apologetic. I never wanted to hurt you. But you don't know what you're dealing with. The doll, your father, everything, it's a part of something much bigger. Something much darker. Emma struggled against the ropes that bound her wrists, but the more she moved, the tighter they seemed to get. She could feel the weight of the truth pressing down on her, but there was something in Lily's eyes that made her question everything. The person she had trusted most, the one she had believed would always be there for her, had been hiding something from her all along. Stop lying, Lily, Emma spat, her voice a mixture of anger and disbelief. You've been involved in this from the start, haven't you? You knew about the doll, about everything. You knew what would happen if I started digging into the past, and yet you let me. You wanted me to find it all. Why? What do you want from me? Lily's lips twitched into something resembling a grim smile, and for a moment, Emma thought she saw a flash of the person she used to know. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by a cold, calculating demeanor that sent a shiver down her spine. It's not about what I want, Emma, she replied, her voice growing firmer. It's about what we all need. You were never meant to be part of this, your father made sure of that. But now that you've uncovered the truth, you have to see the bigger picture. Emma's mind was reeling. What bigger picture? She could feel the walls closing in around her, the weight of the knowledge that she was no longer in control of her own fate. And then, before she could say anything else, Lily flipped open one of the papers in the file, revealing a photograph. A photograph of Emma, but not the one she was used to. No, this was from when she was much younger, holding the same doll that had haunted her dreams and memories for weeks now. And standing next to her, smiling brightly, was someone she never expected to see, her father. You see, Emma, Lily continued, her voice colder now, this isn't just about you. Your father has been playing both sides for years. He's been working with them, and he's been protecting you from the truth because he knew what would happen if you ever discovered it. But it's too late now. The truth has already come out, and now we have to deal with it. You're the key. You always were. Emma's head was spinning, and for a moment, everything around her felt like it was falling apart. Her father. How could that be possible? She had trusted him. She had always believed in him, believed that he was the one person who would never betray her. But this was something else entirely. Was he really the mastermind behind all of this? Had he been lying to her entire life? As if reading her mind, Lily leaned forward, her eyes cold as she said, "You think your father was protecting you, Emma, but he wasn't. He was keeping you in the dark. He was trying to save himself, and the rest of us were just collateral damage. The doll, it's not just a toy. It's a part of an old ritual, a key that unlocks the next phase of something bigger, something your father's been involved in for years. And now, you're the one who's going to finish it." The words hit Emma like a punch to the gut. Everything she had thought she understood, every connection she had made, it was all a lie. But then, in a surge of clarity, something clicked. She wasn't just a pawn in this game. She had been the target all along, but now, she was the one holding the power. "I won't do it," Emma said, her voice steady despite the chaos inside her. "You won't control me, and I won't be part of your plan. You can't use me like this." Lily's face twisted in frustration. "You don't have a choice. They're already here. And once you unlock what's hidden inside that doll, everything will change. You can't fight it anymore. You never could." But Emma wasn't listening anymore. As Lily moved toward her, the ropes around Emma's wrists suddenly loosened, a final unexpected twist she hadn't seen coming. In an instant, she was free, her hands grabbing at the papers Lily had dropped, the file falling to the ground as Emma took a deep breath. "What do you want from me?" she asked, her voice a mix of defiance and confusion. "You have to make the choice," Lily said, her voice thick with regret. "You'll either let them control you, or you'll stop them. But in doing so, you might destroy everyone you've ever known." And as Emma stood there, clutching the final piece of the puzzle in her hands, the room seemed to tremble. The world was about to shift, and everything she thought she knew was about to come crashing down around her. The room was silent now, the tension having reached its peak and slowly unraveling into a haunting stillness. Emma stood there, holding the file, her hands trembling slightly as she stared at the photos, the documents, and the strange symbols that filled the pages. She had spent weeks, months even, trying to untangle the web that had bound her life to this dark, twisted mystery. And now, as the pieces came together in ways she could barely comprehend, she realized that she had come to the final moment of this journey, one that had cost her everything she thought she knew about herself, her family, and the world around her. Lily had been right in one aspect. This wasn't just about the doll or the conspiracy. It had never been. It was about Emma herself. The doll, the cryptic messages, her father's cryptic warnings, the people in her life, everything had been leading to this singular moment. She could feel the weight of it in her chest, the responsibility of knowing that the choice she made now would not just define her future, but the future of everyone around her. For the first time, she realized that the truth she had uncovered wasn't something she could walk away from. She wasn't just a bystander in this. She was part of something much larger, something that could not be undone. But that didn't mean she had to play by their rules. She didn't have to become the person they wanted her to be. She had fought for her truth, for her answers, and now it was time to decide how far she was willing to go to protect what remained of her life. The power in her hands, the knowledge that she had uncovered, the choices she had yet to make was a burden, yes, but also a gift. She could rewrite the ending. Or, at least, she could try. With a deep breath, Emma turned toward the dark hallway. It was quiet, too quiet, and she felt a cold shiver running down her spine. She knew that the world outside was waiting for her, that those who had been orchestrating this twisted game were still out there, watching, waiting. But she wasn't afraid anymore. She had stared down the truth, even when it was ugly, even when it was more than she could bear. And now, she would take that final step. Lily was still standing in the corner, her face pale, her eyes filled with regret. But Emma saw something else now, something more human than the cold distance that had been there before. Lily had been caught in the web, just like Emma. They were both victims of a much larger game, and somewhere deep down, Emma could see that. But it didn't change the fact that she couldn't trust her anymore. Not fully. Not after everything that had been revealed. "I can't let this go," Emma whispered, her voice steady but resolute. She didn't look back as she walked toward the door, feeling the weight of every choice she had made leading her to this final moment. There was no going back now. She had to see this through. But as her hand reached for the doorknob, a sharp pain shot through her chest. She froze, her breath catching in her throat. The sharp sound of footsteps echoed from behind her, and she turned just in time to see Lily moving toward her, a look of desperation on her face. "Emma, wait," Lily called, her voice trembling. "Please. You don't know what you're doing." But Emma didn't stop. She couldn't stop now. This had to end. The truth had to be revealed, even if it meant losing everything else. Her father's betrayal, the years of lies, the dark forces pulling the strings, it was all coming to a head. And Emma was done being the pawn in this game. She would be the one to take control. She would be the one to decide what happened next. As she opened the door and stepped into the unknown, the feeling of finality washed over her. The questions that had haunted her for so long were slowly being answered, piece by piece, and yet, there was something else, something that Emma couldn't quite put into words. The doll, the ritual, her father's secret life, it was all a part of a much larger picture. But was that picture really finished? Was it truly over? The door closed behind her with a finality that sent a chill down her spine. The silence outside was deafening, as though the world had stopped turning, holding its breath. She had made her choice, but she didn't know where it would take her. She didn't know if she was walking toward freedom or straight into a trap. But she was ready to face whatever came next. After all, the truth had been revealed. There were no more secrets left to uncover. Except for one. In the distance, hidden beneath the shadows of the alleyway, Emma could see a figure standing still, watching her. She didn't know who it was, but she knew one thing: this story wasn't over. Not yet. There was more to this than she could have ever imagined, and the final piece of the puzzle, the last clue, was still out there, waiting to be found. The doll had unlocked something, yes, but it wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. And as Emma walked away, the weight of her decision pressing on her chest, she realized that the mystery would follow her, lingering in the air like a whisper. No matter where she went, no matter how far she ran, the unanswered questions would always remain. The truth was out there, yes, but it wasn't finished yet. The story would never be over. Not until she uncovered everything. The screen fades to black, and the words appear. Is the truth ever really out there? Or are we just trying to survive long enough to face it?